Picture this late at night inside a small diner. Dirty dishes, exhausted waiters, and a young waitress with tears in her eyes. She thinks no one will ever notice her struggle. But just then, a stranger walks through the door. And that stranger is not just anyone. It's John Cena. What happens next will not only transform a restaurant, but also change lives forever. John Cena is known worldwide for his motto, "Never give up." But what happens when a man, in the noise of his own success, forgets the true soul of his dream? This is the story of the day John Cena walked into his own diner and discovered that the people working there weren't hungry for food. They were starving for respect. It's a story of struggle, of tears, and of the moment when a true leader decides, enough is enough. By the end of this story, you won't see John Cena just as a wrestler. You'll see him as a man who proves that real strength is lifting others up. So watch this video till the very end. Smash the like button, subscribe for more inspiring stories, and tell us in the comments, if you were in John Cena's place, would you stay silent or stand up for everyone? It had been years since John Cena had stepped into one of his own diners without cameras, business meetings, or managers surrounding him. In the beginning, every booth felt like home. Every plate of food carried his pride. Back then, it wasn't just about business. It was about people. But now, something was different. The reports on his desk showed profits and growth. But behind those numbers came whispers, unhappy customers, high staff turnover, and rumors of mistreatment inside the walls of the very diners he had built with his dream. So, one cloudy evening, John Cena decided to see the truth for himself. No spotlight, no fame, just a faded hoodie, worn-out jeans, and a simple baseball cap hiding his face. He parked across the street from one of his oldest diners, a place that once carried his vision, now carrying only doubt. As John Cena pushed open the door, the bell above gave a tired chime. The smell hit him first, grease, burnt coffee, and something stale in the air. The vinyl seats were cracked, the blinds hung uneven, and the once warm atmosphere felt cold and forgotten. A waitress hurried past, balancing a tray of mugs. Her name tag read Lucy. She forced a smile and said, "Welcome, just one today?" Her voice was polite but stretched thin, her eyes heavy with exhaustion. John Cena nodded quietly and sat by the window. The coffee she brought was bitter and lukewarm, but he drank it anyway, because in that bitter taste, he felt the honesty of the struggle inside this place. As he watched Lucy run from table to table, endlessly refilling cups and apologizing for delays, a harsh voice erupted from the kitchen. "Lucy, where's table 6? You falling behind again?" She flinched. The voice was sharp, impatient, the kind of tone that crushes more than it corrects. John Cena's jaw tightened. This wasn't the dream he had once built. This wasn't the family environment he had promised. This was something else, a machine that had forgotten its soul. And for the first time in years, John Cena realized he hadn't come here just for a meal. He had come here to remember what he had lost. The diner was busy, but it didn't feel alive. Plates clattered, customers whispered complaints, and through it all Lucy kept moving, like a machine programmed to never stop. John Cena watched her closely. She wasn't just serving food. She was running on empty, trying to hold the place together with nothing but a forced smile and trembling hands. Lucy approached his booth again. "Sorry about the wait," she said softly, placing a plate of fries in front of him. She avoided eye contact, her voice carrying the weight of someone who had apologized too many times for things beyond her control. John Cena gave her a kind look. "You're doing great," he said gently. For a split second, she froze. It was as if no one had said those words to her in a long, long time. Her lips parted, then quickly closed, and she hurried away to another table. From the kitchen, the same gruff voice echoed again. "Lucy, Did you double-check those orders? We don't have time for your mistakes. The words weren't just loud. They were cruel. Customers at nearby booths turned their heads. A group of teenagers snickered, whispering, "That angry chef again." Lucy's face tightened. She muttered, "Coming right up," and rushed into the kitchen. John Cena's eyes narrowed. He could feel it. The exhaustion, the fear, the disrespect filling the air. This wasn't the vision he had once sketched on a napkin years ago, when he dreamed of diners that felt like family. No, this was survival. Then, the sound cut through the chatter. At first faint, then clearer. Crying. Not just tired sighs, but real, stifled sobs. Lucy's voice, breaking. "I'm trying my best, okay? I haven't had a break in 6 hours. I'm doing everything I can." The manager's reply came sharp, cold. "If you can't handle the pressure, maybe you don't belong here." No excuses. John Cena froze mid-bite. The fork slipped from his hand and clinked against the plate. His chest tightened. In that moment, it wasn't about numbers. It wasn't about business. It was about humanity. John Cena pushed back his chair slowly, stood up, and walked toward the kitchen door. For a second, he hesitated. Part of him still hidden behind the hoodie, still the stranger no one recognized. But then he pushed the door open. Inside, he saw Lucy wiping her eyes, her hands shaking as she clutched her apron. The manager, a stocky, red-faced man with a stained apron, loomed over her, arms crossed, his presence more threatening than helpful. 2 young cooks pretended to be busy at the prep station, their eyes glued to their cutting boards, afraid to intervene. John Cena stepped closer. His voice was calm, but carried weight. "Is there a problem here?" The manager turned, surprised. "Who are you? This is none of your..." Before he could finish, Lucy whispered quickly, "It's fine. I'm sorry." Her voice cracked under the pressure. But John Cena didn't look at her apology. He looked at the manager, his jaw firm, his eyes steady. "She looks like she needs a break," John Cena said, his voice low but commanding. "Why don't you let her sit for a minute?" The manager scoffed. "We're short-staffed. No time for breaks during a rush." John Cena didn't raise his tone. He didn't need to. There's always time to treat people with respect. The room went silent. The cooks stopped moving. Lucy stood frozen, her hands clenched into fists. For a long second, no one spoke. But inside John Cena, something had shifted. This wasn't just about one waitress. It wasn't about one diner. It was about everything he had once stood for, and everything he had let slip away. That night, as he left without touching his food, John Cena scribbled a note in a small notebook he carried. No respect, no support, no soul. And for the first time in a long time, John Cena felt the fire inside him return. Because this wasn't just about business anymore. This was personal. The next morning, the diner buzzed with the same tired rhythm. The same cracked booths, the same faded blinds, the same air of exhaustion. But this time, John Cena returned. Same hoodie, same cap, same quiet steps. Only his resolve had changed. He wasn't here to simply observe anymore. He was here to understand and to act. Lucy walked in, her hair tied back, dark circles beneath her eyes even heavier than the night before. She nodded at John Cena, not realizing who he was, and asked softly, "Just coffee again?" John Cena gave a small smile. "Yeah, take your time." Her hands trembled slightly as she poured the coffee. He leaned in. "Lucy, right? You were here yesterday too." She gave a tired smile. "Yes, sorry. I didn't recognize you. So many faces lately." John Cena's tone softened. "I remember you helped that little kid with crayons. Even when you were exhausted, you still cared." Her smile faltered. She looked down at the counter. "Sometimes it feels like that's all I can do. Keep smiling. Even when nobody notices. John Cena let her words hang in the air. Then quietly he asked, "How long have you been working here?" 8 months, she whispered. "And it's always like this?" Her eyes flicked toward the kitchen door. "Not always," she said carefully. "But lately, yes. We're always short-staffed. And when things get bad, Brent." She stopped herself, lowering her voice. "The manager, he makes it worse." John Cena nodded. He already knew. He had heard it with his own ears the night before. And right on cue, the door swung open. Brent stormed out, clipboard in hand, eyes sharp as knives. "Lucy, clocked in already? Then stop chatting and get section 3 set up. We've got a rush coming." The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Lucy quickly nodded and hurried off, her shoulders shrinking as though she were bracing against a storm. Brent barely glanced at John Cena, muttering something under his breath as he stomped back into the kitchen. John Cena's hands tightened around his coffee cup. His patience was wearing thin. The rush began. Customers trickled in. Construction workers, an elderly couple, a father with his little daughter half asleep on his shoulder. Lucy ran between tables, balancing plates, apologizing for delays, plastering on smiles that never reached her eyes. Then it happened. A man in a red flannel shirt slammed his fork down. "These eggs are hard as rubber," he snapped. "Every week it's something here." Lucy leaned in gently, her voice soft. "I'm so sorry, sir. I'll have them remade immediately." But Brent had already heard. He stormed out like a thundercloud, voice booming loud enough to make heads turn. "How many times do I have to tell you, Lucy? Check the plates before they go out. This isn't rocket science." The entire diner froze. Forks stopped midair. Customers glanced uncomfortably at one another. Lucy's face burned red. Her eyes dropped, her back bent slightly under the weight of humiliation. And that's when it happened. The sound of a chair scraping against the floor. John Cena stood up. Every eye turned toward him. His voice wasn't loud, but it carried through the room like a command. "That's enough." Brent whipped around, scowling. "And who the hell are you to tell me how to run my kitchen?" Slowly, calmly, John Cena reached into his pocket. He pulled out a small wallet and flipped it open. Inside, a laminated ID badge with his photo and name. Clear. Undeniable. "My name is John Cena," he said evenly, his gaze locked on Brent. "I'm the founder of this place. I own this diner. And I've seen enough." The room went dead silent. Lucy froze, her eyes wide. One of the young cooks peeked from the kitchen, his knife still in hand, stunned. Even customers leaned in, whispering in shock. Brent's face drained of color, then flushed deep red. "I didn't know." "No." John Cena cut him off, his voice steady as stone. "You didn't care. If you cared, you wouldn't treat people like this. Not my staff. Not my customers." The words hung heavy, more powerful than any shout could ever be. Brent shifted uncomfortably, his bravado cracking. "We'll talk in the back," John Cena said firmly. "This ends now." The entire diner held its breath as Brent slowly walked toward the kitchen door, his apron hanging heavy at his side. John Cena turned to Lucy. His voice softened. "This isn't going to slide. Not anymore." And with that, he followed Brent into the kitchen. The door swung shut with a dull thud, and everyone in the diner knew something inside was about to change forever. The kitchen door swung shut, muffling the whispers of the diner outside. Inside, the air was thick with tension. Brent stood stiffly near the prep station, arms crossed, his face red with anger and embarrassment. The two young cooks kept their eyes down, knives moving nervously on cutting boards, pretending to focus. John Cena didn't speak right away. He let the silence work, heavy and unshakable. When he finally did, his voice was calm, but every word carried weight. Do you have any idea what kind of environment you've created here? Brent scoffed, trying to regain control. Look, we're short-staffed. I'm under pressure. If people can't handle the heat, they shouldn't be in the kitchen. John Cena's eyes narrowed. He didn't raise his tone, but the intensity in his voice cut sharper than any shout. That's not leadership. That's mismanagement. Your job is to protect your team, not break them down. Brent's bravado cracked. He shifted uncomfortably, his arms loosening. I thought I had it under control, he muttered. John Cena stepped closer, his presence filling the room. You don't. Not anymore. You're finished here, effective immediately. The words hit like a thunderclap. Brent's eyes widened. Wait, you can't just fire me like this. I can, John Cena said firmly, his voice steady as steel. And I am. HR will handle your paperwork. But you're done humiliating people in my diner. The two cooks glanced at each other, stunned. Lucy, who had stepped quietly to the doorway, gasped softly, her hand covering her mouth. Brent's shoulders slumped. For the first time, the fire in his eyes faded. Without another word, he pulled off his stained apron, tossed it onto the counter, and walked out the back door. The sound of it slamming shut was like an ending and a beginning. John Cena exhaled, his jaw unclenching. He didn't enjoy firing people, but some battles required tough choices. And this one was about protecting dignity. When John Cena returned to the dining room, the hush hadn't lifted. Customers stared, forks halfway to their mouths, eyes filled with disbelief. Lucy stood frozen near the counter, and Connor, the quiet young cook, peeked nervously from the kitchen. John Cena spoke simply, clearly. I want to thank you all for your patience. Things are going to change here, starting today. The entire room seemed to breathe again. Some customers nodded. Others leaned back, relieved. Then John Cena turned his focus to the staff. His voice softened, but carried a promise. Lucy, Connor, meet me after your shift. We need to talk. Lucy's eyes widened. She swallowed hard, then gave the faintest nod. Connor's face brightened, just slightly, as he nodded too. The rest of the afternoon carried a different energy. Lucy wasn't flinching at every sound anymore. Connor worked the kitchen with quiet confidence, plates moving smoothly, orders going out on time. Customers smiled again, conversations resumed, and for the first time in months, maybe years, the diner felt alive. And through it all, John Cena sat quietly at a corner booth, scribbling in his notebook. No speeches, no spotlight, just observation, patience, and a silent vow. When the last table was cleared and the closed sign flipped, Lucy and Connor approached. They were nervous, hesitant, but beneath that, there was something new, something fragile. Hope. Have a seat, John Cena said, gesturing to the booth across from him. They slid in. Lucy's hands twisted the edge of a napkin. Connor's jaw was tight, but his eyes held curiosity. John Cena leaned forward, his voice warm. First, thank you. I saw how much you've carried, how much you've endured. You've kept this place running when no one else cared. That means more than you know. Lucy blinked fast, trying to hold back tears. Connor stayed silent, but his lips pressed tight, as if holding back words he'd never been brave enough to say. John Cena continued. I built this diner years ago because I believed in something. Family, respect, a place where people felt seen. Somewhere along the way, I lost sight of that. That's on me. But it changes now. He turned to Connor first. You stepped up. You supported Lucy when no one else did. That's leadership. I want you as assistant manager. A raise. Regular hours. Support you deserve. Connor's eyes widened. Me? I don't know what to say. You don't need to say anything, John Cena said with a small smile. You've already earned it." Then he turned to Lucy. 8 months. 8 months of running this place on your back. Holding it together with a smile, even through exhaustion. Starting next week, you're getting a raise. More staff will be hired, so you're not working every shift alone. And there will be a bonus system, so people like you are recognized, not ignored. Lucy's hand flew to her mouth, her eyes brimming. I don't know how to thank you." "You don't have to," John Cena said gently. "You've already given more than enough." The diner was quiet now, the fluorescent lights humming above. But for the first time in a long time, the silence didn't feel heavy. It felt hopeful, and deep inside, John Cena knew this was only the beginning. The very next morning, John Cena was back at the diner, long before the first customer walked in. Same hoodie, same cap, same quiet steps. But this time, he carried something else. A notebook, a pen, and a deeper sense of responsibility. He wasn't just here to observe anymore. He was here to rebuild. The chairs were still stacked on tables. The floor smelled of disinfectant. In the kitchen, Connor was already prepping vegetables, focused and steady. Lucy walked in minutes later, rubbing her tired eyes, surprised to see John Cena sitting at the counter with a cup of fresh coffee. "Morning," she whispered, half nervous, half hopeful. "Morning," John Cena replied warmly. "Today, things start changing." Lucy gave a small nod, but her expression still carried doubt. She had heard promises before. What made this one different? At exactly 8:17 a.m., a silver sedan pulled up. Out stepped a woman in her late 40s, salt and pepper curls, sharp posture, and the kind of presence that demanded both respect and trust. Her name was Denise Carson. She had managed rival diners for over a decade and was known for one thing: not running kitchens, but leading people. John Cena had met her once at a charity event. She told him something that stuck with him. A restaurant doesn't survive on food alone. It survives on the people who serve it. And that's why he brought her here. As Denise stepped inside, John Cena gathered the team. Lucy, Connor, and the few new hires. "Everyone, I want you to meet Denise," he said. "She's our new general manager. And together, we're going to build the diner this place was meant to be." Denise gave a warm smile. "I'm not here to fix you. I'm here to support you. We fix things together." Those words landed deeper than any lecture could. For the first time, Lucy's shoulders loosened. Connor gave a sure nod. Even the new hires stood straighter, as if they finally belonged. Denise wasted no time. Clipboard in hand, she didn't just bark orders, she listened. She asked questions. What slows you down the most? Where do you feel unsupported? What do customers complain about most often? By the end of the week, the diner felt like a completely different place. Staff schedules were balanced, breaks were respected. The broken ice machine was finally fixed. Extra hires were added to lighten the load. Customers who once grumbled about cold eggs or long waits now lingered longer, enjoying food with laughter. It wasn't just logistics that changed. It was energy. The air inside the diner was lighter, warmer, alive again. One afternoon, John Cena returned after a long day at headquarters. He walked through the back door and froze, smiling at what he saw. At the employee table sat Denise, Lucy, and Connor, eating fries together and laughing like old friends. They looked relaxed, real, human. "Pull up a chair," Denise called with a grin. John Cena sat down beside them. "How's it feeling now?" he asked. Connor spoke first. "Honestly, like we're allowed to care again. About the job. About each other." Lucy nodded softly. "I didn't realize how tense I'd been until I wasn't anymore." Denise smirked and slid the fries toward him. "Still think you belong in the corporate tower? Or down here with us?" John Cena chuckled, grabbing a fry. If the tower doesn't have fries like these, I think I'll stay right here. For the first time in a long time, John Cena didn't feel like an outsider in his own diner. He felt like he was home. Nights at the diner were different now. The once heavy silence had been replaced with a hum of laughter, clinking glasses, and warm conversations. Customers lingered longer. Staff moved with confidence. And for the first time in months, Lucy's smile wasn't forced. It was real. John Cena stood near the counter one evening, quietly observing. No spotlight, no cameras, no announcements. Just him, watching a dream come back to life. What started with one confrontation in a tired kitchen had become something far greater. Lucy, once on the verge of breaking, was now mentoring new servers. Connor, the young cook, carried himself with authority as assistant manager. Denise, with her steady guidance, had transformed the diner into a place of respect and balance. But John Cena knew this wasn't just about one location. He had seen something deeper. A culture problem that had been ignored too long. So, at headquarters, he made a bold move. In a boardroom filled with executives, John Cena spoke with the same calm force he had used in the diner kitchen. What if every manager in this company had to reapply for their job? He asked. The room fell silent. He continued. Not to punish them, but to realign. To make sure leadership isn't just about numbers and profits, but about people, about empathy, about respect. Some executives pushed back, worried about investors, worried about disruption. But John Cena leaned forward, steady as ever. If we can't build a company where being decent is part of the job description, then what are we really building? The message was clear. Leadership wasn't a title. It was a responsibility. Busts in Silhouette lives changed. Over the next month, changes spread across every diner that carried John Cena's name. Managers were evaluated not only on performance, but on compassion. Training programs included not just customer service, but humanity. Stories from Lucy, Connor, and Denise became company-wide examples, not as cautionary tales, but as blueprints for what leadership should look like. Lucy was promoted and given the recognition she had long deserved. Connor was enrolled in a leadership development program paid for by the company. Denise's strategies for scheduling and morale became the new standard. And every diner across the country began to feel the shift. Person walking the quiet visit. But for John Cena, the most meaningful moments weren't in boardrooms or press releases. They were in the quiet visits back to that first diner in Spring Haven. He would slip in, unnoticed, order pancakes, and chat with whoever was behind the counter like an old friend. No big announcements, no corporate inspections, just presence. One evening, as Lucy handed him the check, she slipped a small folded note inside. It read, "This place feels like home again. Thank you for not giving up on us." John Cena tucked the note into his notebook, his chest tight with pride. Not the kind you boast about, the kind you carry quietly. Because he knew this wasn't just about food, or diners, or even business. It was about people. Late one night, long after the last customer had left and the lights inside the diner had gone dark, John Cena sat in his car across the street. The neon sign still flickered weakly in the window, a reminder of where things had been and how far they had come. He rested both hands on the steering wheel and let the silence sink in. This wasn't just about a restaurant anymore. It was about leadership, about humanity, about never forgetting the people who carry your dream when you're not watching. In his notebook, he wrote one simple line, "Be close enough to see the sweat." Because that was the truth he had rediscovered. Success wasn't about being untouchable. It was about being present, listening, lifting others up when they were breaking under the weight. Globe showing Europe, Africa the bigger picture. Over the following weeks, John Cena's decision rippled far beyond the walls of a single diner. Managers across the company shifted the way they worked. Staff began to feel respected. Customers noticed the difference. But more than that, workers felt human again. Lucy, once broken, now mentored new hires with confidence. Connor, once quiet, now carried himself like a leader. Denise, once overlooked in the industry, now shaped the future of the entire chain. And through it all, John Cena didn't stand in front like a showman. He stood beside them, present, steady, human. Speech balloon John Cena's final words. "If there's one thing I've learned," he said in a quiet video message shared with his team and fans alike, "it's that never give up isn't just for the ring. It's for life. Never give up on yourself. Never give up on the people who fight beside you. And never give up on the dignity that every human being deserves." So if this story touched you, let it remind you of one thing. Real strength is not about how high you climb. It's about how many people you lift along the way. Backhand index pointing right, hit the like button. Subscribe for more powerful stories. And tell us in the comments. If you were in John Cena's place that night, would you have stayed silent? Or stood up for respect?